Hello my dear students and viewers. I am Puranjay Biswas, Professor and Chairman, Department of English, Dhaka College, affiliated with the University of Dhaka. I welcome you to my today's lecture on Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken. Today, I want to discuss different poetic devices and figures of speech as has been used in the poem The Road Not Taken. My dear students, I mentioned in my last class about the structure of the poem. The poem consists of 4 stanzas. Each stanza contains 5 lines. That is, the poem contains altogether 20 lines. And what are the poetic devices and figures of speech that we can find in this poem? Please see the board, and I want to show the poem. At first, the first 2 stanzas. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And with one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. So this is the first stanza. Look, in the very beginning of the poem we find metaphor. 2 roads constitute the main metaphor in the sentence. What is a metaphor? A metaphor is a figure of speech, which means implicit comparison between 2 dissimilar things. Human life is compared to a road. So it's a metaphor. At the same time, we find symbol in 2 roads. Roads actually symbolize the ways of life, and the fork from where 2 roads are diverged can be compared to the choices of life. Again, the yellow wood is an image. We find some imagery in the poem. As for example, the 2 roads in a yellow wood is an imagery. Now, what is imagery? Imagery means the use of figurative language that appeals to our 5 physical senses. So, we can find an image reflected on our mind when we go through the line 2 roads diverge in a yellow wood. That is, it is autumn and the forest is yellow, and in that yellow wood the traveler can see 2 roads diverged in 2 directions. So there is an appeal on the mind of the readers, reflecting an image of a forest and roads. My dear students, here we also find consonants. What is consonants? Consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds in words closely related. Here we find the repetition of the, diversed, and would. Again, D and D, that is the. The sounds are repeated in the two neighboring closely related words. Again, we find assonance. What is assonance? Assonance is the repetition of vowel sound in words closely related. As for example, in the first line, we find the repetition of O sound, vowel sound, O. Again, yellow, O. Further, wood, O. That is, O sounds are repeated, and this is called assonance. Now, we also find anaphora in the first stanza. What is anaphora? Anaphora is a figure of speech, which means the repetition of the word or phrase at the beginning of successive lines, clauses, or sentences. As for example, in the second line, the beginning we find and in the third line the same and is repeated. Again, in the fourth line at the beginning we find the repetition of and sorry, and be one traveler and looked up. So and is repeated at the beginning of altogether 3 words, at the beginning of 3 lines of this stanza. This is called anaphora. My students, we also find in this stanza enjambment. What is enjambment? Enjambment means the continuity of 2 or more than 2 lines without the use of any punctuation such as comma, semicolon, or full stop. Look at the second, third, and fourth line. And sorry, I could not trouble both. There is no punctuation. And the line continued. And be one traveler long I stood. There is no punctuation at the end. Again, and looked down one as far as I could. So, after both, there is no punctuation. After stood, there is no punctuation. After could, there is no punctuation. So, at the end of the 3 lines, there are no punctuations like comma, semicolon, or full stop. Such kind of continuity of 2 or more lines without punctuation is called enjambment. Now we find a rhyming scheme in this poem. What is rhyme? Rhyme is the repetition of the same sound at the end or within 2 or more lines in a poem. And in this poem, the road not taken, we find a regular rhyme scheme. And what is that? Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Wood. So this is called A. According to the rule, it is called A. And sorry, I could not travel both. This is B. Then and B, one traveler long I stood. So wood and stood. Same sound is repeated. Wood is A, so stood is also A. These two words are rhymed together. Again, could, would, stood, could. These three words and their ending sounds are rhymed together. So, wood is A, stood is A, and could is also A. And both and undergrowth, both growth. These are rhymed together. Both is B and undergrowth is also B. So what is the rhyme scheme? The rhyme scheme of this stanza is A, B, A, B. A, B, A, B. And the second stanza maintains the same rhyme scheme. In fact, all the four stanzas of this poem contain the same pattern of rhyme. That is A, B, A, B. My dear students, now let us discuss the second stanza. Then took the other at just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted were. Though as for that the passing there had owned them really about the same. In the first line we find simile. What is a simile? A simile is a figure of speech which means explicit comparison between two dissimilar things using as or as, like, such as, etc. Here the road is compared just as fair. So here is the use of as. So it is a simile. The road is compared. And having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted were. Here, grassy and wanted were. Here is another figure of speech which is called personification. Now, what is personification? Personification is a figure of speech in which some thing or abstract idea or concept are given human qualities. That is, something or some abstract idea is given human qualities and treated as human being, as a person. This is called personification. How it is a personification? Wanted. The word wanted is applicable to a person, to a human being. Here, in fact, the road is not a person, but it is presented here as a person that wanted were, just like a person. So it is a kind of personification. Here we also find alliteration. Here we find alliteration. What is alliteration? Alliteration is the repetition of the same consonant sound at the beginning of successive words in a line of a poem. As for example, wanted were, here this consonant sound is repeated at the beginning of two words, wanted and were. So this is repeated at the beginning of two words. So this is called alliteration. Right? We also find alliteration in the next sentence. Though as for that the passing there. Here the so the sound, that is the consonant sound the, is repeated again and again in this line. So here occurs alliteration. We also find again in this stanza assonance. Assonance is the repetition of the vowel sound in words closely related. As for example, a sound in that, a sound in passing are repeated. So here is assonance. My dear students, so far I have discussed some poetic devices and figures of speech. In this context, I want to say that in this poem, iambic tetrameter has been used with some variation of both anapest and trochaic foot. Now I want to shift to the other two stanzas of the poem. My dear students, now let us discuss the last two stanzas. As I have mentioned that in this poem we find 4 stanzas and each stanza consists of 5 lines. So it is called quatrain. Quatrain is a stanza consisting of 5 lines. So let us discuss the last 10 lines. In fact, we have already discussed the most important poetic devices and figures of speech, and here we find the repetition of all those figures of speech and poetic devices. Look, and both that morning equally lay. Here we find the repetition of vowel sound in word that, a sound, equally again a sound, and lay again a sound. So the vowel sound in closely related words is called assonance. Equally lay, equally and lay, and this is called assonance. Again we find in the third line, oh, I kept the first four, that is the letter F, and we have to utter this for, first for. So this is the repetition of consonant sound at the beginning of two neighboring words. And this type of repetition of same consonant sound at the beginning is called alliteration. So this is alliteration. Again, in the fourth line, yet knowing how way leads on to way. Here is again a repetition of consonant sound, way and way. This is called again alliteration. My students, you should always keep in mind all these poetic devices, rhetorics, figures of speech to understand any poem clearly and completely. In the last stanza, we again find another poetic device which is called repetition. What is repetition? Repetition means to repeat the same words or phrases. As for example, Samha ages and ages. Ages and ages. So ages is repeated side by side, and this is called another poetic device named repetition. My students, here we also find the rhyme scheme, same rhyme scheme. This is a, lay a, black, be, day, lay, day. So this is also a, again way, lay, day and way. Again, lay, day and way. So same sound is repeated. Lay is rhymed with day and way. So all these three are called a. Black and back. Black, back. So ka sound is repeated. So black is rhymed with back. Lay, day and way are rhymed together. So the rhyme scheme is a, b, a, b. This is the rhyme scheme. Same rhyme scheme we can find sigh. This is a, hence b, I, a, by, a, hence deference, b. Here the rhyme scheme again a, b, a, b. That is sigh, I and by. These three are rhymed together. Again, hence and deference. Hence is rhymed with deference. So it is B and B. The rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B. My students, so far I have discussed the form of the poem, the number of stanzas, the number of lines, rhyme scheme or rhythm, that is meter, and different poetic devices and figures of speech. In the next class, we shall discuss another poem of Robert Frost, that is Mending Ode. Thank you. All the best. See you next.